The Auburn Tigers should have answers for the defensive side of the football.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zach Blackerby, and thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. We hopped on Auburn Opelika this morning with our good buddy Ben Taylor to talk about the issues and questions on the defensive side of the football for the Tigers. Hank Brown, what can he do now that SEC play is upon us? And of course, Malcolm Simmons. Hugh Freeze said some interesting things about getting Simmons involved in the game plan.
But right now, I think my biggest concern is probably the defense.
Yeah.
And the secondary in particular, and really not much of a pass rush. I don't know if that was by design this past week to keep that quarterback in the pocket so he didn't leave, and we may see a difference this weekend. But those are my concerns moving forward as a Bobby Petrino-led offense heads into Jordan-Hare on Saturday.
Yeah, and those Petrino offenses, I mean, Hugh Freeze had super high praise for what they like to do on offense. I mean, they make you defend a lot of different stuff, a combination of spread as well as pro style. Multiple levels of the defense will be attacked by that Petrino offense. So Auburn's got its hands full, no question about it. And this is a defense that has struggled. I think a lot of it is on the pass rush. I know the defensive backs got a lot of criticism against New Mexico, and that's probably fair to some extent. Keontae Scott caught a lot of that. I don't think there's any question about it, but they were without their best corner. And I think it kind of exposed the fact that Auburn has a lot of cornerback twos and cornerback threes. And then Kayin Lee is their cornerback one. And when you have him on the field, I do think it slots other guys down and makes their task a little bit more manageable as far as what they're capable of doing. Hugh Freeze said at the presser on Monday that, Kayin Lee's going to try to play. He probably could have played against New Mexico, but they held him out. To me, that says he's going to play this week. And if that's the case, it does fix a lot of these things. My biggest issue is how they're using their two best edge defenders.
Or lack thereof.
Kayin Lee, Kieran Crawford, dropping them back in coverage. I think you see them more on the line of scrimmage this week against Arkansas. That is my guess. Some of that might be wishful thinking, but that is my prediction right now.
I would love to see it because they can be disruptors. And the reason I say that is anybody that got an opportunity to see the LSU South Carolina game, the two South Carolina edge rushers who are also young, also well-known, they caused a lot of havoc for LSU. They caused a lot of problems just because even if they didn't get to the quarterback, they still were back there enough to make things go haywire. And I think that is something that needs to happen. And the reason being is because you just mentioned it, the young defensive backs that Auburn has, they kind of got lost on Saturday. Anytime a guy's got 4 and 5 and sometimes 7 seconds to throw a ball, that's a lot of running around and a lot of covering that you got to do, especially if you're 18 years old.
Yeah, it's a problem. That's a problem. And so the best corners in the world can't cover for 6 or 7 seconds. That's insane. That's insane.
That's asking a lot.
Yeah, especially with all the rules kind of being catered to the offense and how you can't touch them or anything like that. It's close to impossible. So we'll see. I think, hats off to DJ Durkin though. His ability to adapt and adjust at halftime this year has been rock solid. The first half defense against Cal, the first half defense against New Mexico, they're both pretty bad. And then in the second half, they really cleaned it up. So props to them on doing that. It's just, okay, how can they do that quicker? How can they go into the game with a better game plan? Because I don't think it's all execution. I do think some of it is execution. That's on the players, but not all of it. And if you're a coach and you know that they're not going to execute what you're calling in the first half, you've got to change that up and figure out how to start the game better. Because against some of these teams coming up, I don't know if Arkansas is in this category, but I think Oklahoma is. Georgia certainly is. If you start off like that on defense, like you did against Cal and New Mexico, you're in too big of a hole. The game's over at halftime. So they've got to get better at starting off fast on the defensive side of the football.
I will say this, and there are a lot of flack went on the defensive backs. Some of it was there were a couple of blown coverages where there wasn't a lot of time taken off. However, one thing that I noticed, and I think that this may actually help Auburn get into SEC play from the linebacker position. I went back and I rewatched the game on Sunday afternoon, and I noticed Eugene Asante, when it was time for him to stunt or when he found a hole he could shoot through.
Yeah.
He did a great job of doing that. He over pursued. He ran by the running back twice without ever getting a hand on him because he basically was out of a cannon and the other guy was going the other direction. And by the time he got to him, it was too late. He's already picked up 4 or 5 yards. And same with a couple of stunts whenever they sent him up the middle to try to get to that quarterback. He ran right by the quarterback, just took one step to the side. He went right by him. And I think playing some SEC caliber teams with some faster offensive players, the speed may match up a little bit, and he may have a breakout game in the next couple of games.
Yeah, and I've talked about this with some players, and we don't always know what the call is and what some of these assignments are. Like if he goes through a different gap, like that's probably not you in this case. Like, was that Eugene Asante's gap? Mm-hmm. Like we don't know. And in some of the cases that I've asked specifically about, it's usually somebody else who's getting washed down the play that's probably responsible for that gap. So sometimes when somebody's close, it could be them just kind of doing more than what they were asked to do. Like we don't always know exactly, whose fault it is for that and what the responsibilities were on that play. But you never want to over pursue for sure. You never want to get too far upfield. No question about it. But I think sending Eugene Asante is something that we will see more of moving forward into conference play for sure.
He just, for some reason, he gets great penetration. And, another thing I'd like to see, and you talked about, corner coming back, and maybe this will help a little bit. First part of the game, there were a couple of times where they were able to get around the outside instead of somebody turning them back in to give the Asantes and the linebackers an opportunity to put a hat on somebody.
Yeah.
Now, that got shored up at halftime, and that got corrected in the second half. But I noticed the first couple of plays that they ran to the outside, our corners just got beat to the edge. And they're going to be playing against guys the next 2 weeks that are going to be faster than what they saw against Cal and New Mexico.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there is a little bit of a debate that we've had on the show, Ben, about like, is Cal a better team than Arkansas? And there are different opinions on this. I think they're in the same tier. Now, their style of play is different. No question about it. But like right now, I do think Cal is a hair better than Arkansas. So we'll see how that translates. But yeah, like you said, their style is different. Like I know Jay Knott, the Cal running back, got a lot of attention, but like Jaquindon Jackson for Arkansas, like to me, he is significantly better. Like that guy is dynamic as it gets. I think Auburn's going to do everything they can to stop the run. And that includes Taylon Green, Arkansas's quarterback, as well as their running back. If they can do that, I think Auburn wins this one.
I want to get to Hank Brown. I know that we need to talk about him. He's on your show quite a bit, and so you're able to visit with him. But I want to walk through kind of his weekend this past weekend and expectations since it came out after the game. Hey, he's the starter for Arkansas. We didn't wait till the Monday press conference. It went ahead.
No, Hugh Freeze put that to bed real quick.
Yep.
Real quick. What does Hank Brown need to do in SEC play? That's coming up right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show is brought to you by Roy. Ben, have you ever just wanted to say, hey, I want to do my part in supporting Auburn athletics or just a specific player or college athlete? Roy stands for Return on You, and it's a new platform that lets you, the fans, get involved in NIL like never before by making contributions to your favorite athletes. By supporting players directly, you can help shape rosters, retain talent, keep your favorite athletes out of the transfer portal. So the way Roy works is you give money to a player. You hop on the app on either iOS or Google Play. All the players are on there.
It's a Roy app?
Yeah, it's called Roy. Yep.
Okay.
And you give money to the players, and the player doesn't get that money until they decide to stay at the school. And so Roy wants to kind of eliminate the fluidity of the transfer portal and the free agency. And so if they transfer, you get the money back. It also gives you exclusive content to that the athlete creates, and Yeah, it's a no-risk contribution, which I think is cool. So download Roy for iOS or Android and enter the referral code Locked On, and you'll get automatically entered into a sweepstakes to win $5,000 cash. Visit joinroy.com for additional details. No purchase necessary, void where prohibited. Get off the sidelines and into the NIL game with Roy. Today's show is also brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Ben, Auburn is a 3.5-point favorite against Arkansas. Right now, gut reaction, where are you going with that?
I'm taking Auburn in that, in my opinion. I think it's at least a touchdown win, if not a 10-point win. If the offense executes and eliminates turnovers, which they did this past weekend, I'm going to go ahead and on FanDuel, I'm going to take Auburn and did they give the line on the over or the over under on there?
I think it's 58.5. I'm not touching that.
Nope, I'm not doing that.
Not touching that at all.
I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to go ahead and stay with the points. I'm not going to go with that. All right.
Yeah, I'm there with you. I'm there with you. Visit FanDuel.com today to download America's #1 sports book. Yeah, Ben, you mentioned Hank Brown there, and obviously 4 touchdowns to 4 different players, no turnovers. Hugh Freeze says he was 100% on his checks as far as run to pass, which shocked a lot of people, but I kind of feel like that should be the expectation, and maybe that's a sign that we should have done this sooner. I don't really want to get into that, but as far as making that jump from what he did in New Mexico to Arkansas, it will be faster. But I think what makes Hank Brown effective is his decisiveness.
Yes,
and to me, I don't think Arkansas has a defense that's really going to trip him up as much as I'm thinking. And so if his thing is consistently making the right decision, as long as Hugh Freeze and his staff give him the right options of plays and the right options of actions to go through, I don't think the jump from New Mexico to Arkansas is going to be devastating. It's a jump, but I don't think it's anything that he's not capable of.
No, I think the biggest jump is going to come 2 weeks from now, 3 weeks from now against Georgia. That's when he's going to start seeing some mixes up in defense and some.
And Oklahoma's defense is good. Next weekend, Oklahoma's defense is pretty good.
Exactly. So it's going to be almost like a gradual progression. Like he saw what took place. He had his feet wet against New Mexico. He's going to see a little bit better defense, Arkansas, and then he's going to see. Yeah, literally did. And then he's going to see a little bit better defense, Oklahoma, and then he's going to see a really good defense whenever he takes on Georgia, if he's still getting the starting nod at that point. Now, you're great on his performance. You mentioned decision-making. I think some of that stuff that they had out there was called, but I still like some of the progressions he made. You and I have had this discussion before. Everybody thinks that a college quarterback is supposed to have 4 reads, and that's just not going to happen. I say that they have 2, maybe 3 if they're like the guy was last weekend and he's able to run around for 7 seconds. Then you can look at a bunch of receivers. But for the most part, first guy, is he open? No. Where's my out? Let me get to that. And I thought he did a good job of that. I think he only forced maybe 1 or 2 passes that I saw that I can remember off the top of my head that either got batted down or even had an opportunity for interception. So him being the quote-unquote gunslinger that he has been called before, I don't think he took any wild chances this past Saturday.
No, the only one, and I mean, Freeze called it out, and we talked about it too right after the game, but when he was rolling out and he threw it out of the pocket, you could tell he was comfortable, or uncomfortable escaping pressure, and just, he should have just thrown it away instead of to a guy that was triple covered or whatever. But outside of that, I didn't really see any decisions that were he didn't look like a freshman out there. No. I mean, compared to what we're used to seeing with this veteran quarterback in Thorne that's played a ton, it just didn't look, it didn't look worse, So to me, we'll see how that translates to Arkansas this weekend. Hey, you and I, before we hopped on, we were talking about Malcolm Simmons and some of the things that Hugh Freeze said about the freshman wide receiver. And I mean, it sounds like he's not fully grasping the playbook, which is reasonable. He didn't go through spring. I think he was a late add in summer, if I recall correctly. And so he just hasn't played college football for very long. And I imagine the playbook and what is asked of him is a lot more at this level than where he played at high school. So Hugh Freeze said, we've got to figure out a block of the playbook where, you create packages and options for Malcolm Simmons. because there's no question the kid's electric. Every time he touches the football, there's just this burst of speed and production. You've got to figure out a way to tap into that.
Well, it's funny because I got railed on Twitter talking about this. I shared that particular quote, and I said, why has this not been discussed after 3 games into the season? And the reason being is because everybody that has been involved in fall camp or fall practice or gone to watch practices throughout the fall, even leading up to the season, has said, it's like, who do we need to keep an eye on? Malcolm Simmons. Who's the guy that we need to look out for? Malcolm Simmons. Like everybody, every podcaster, every beat writer, everybody. And of course, then they're like, well, I mean, you still don't know what you got. And people are like, that's why he's coaching you. I was like, I'm not pretending to coach. I'm just saying, if he's had trouble grasping the playbook, clearly they had some sort of package for him. He literally started out the 2024 season toting the ball and making the first play of the game. They did that on purpose. That's not something that you just decide after the coin flip. That had been practiced all week. So I'm just wondering why it didn't take place a little bit sooner, because apparently he is a super freak. You and I have talked about it. He hits top speed after a step and a half. He doesn't have to get a running start.
Right. Yeah. So to me, it's like, okay, let's figure out how to get him involved. It sounds like that's going to be part of it. I don't want it to become a thing, especially now that he said this publicly. I don't want this to become a thing where he, like, if he's on the field, he gets the football.
Yep.
And like we've seen that before. Who is that? There's a running back under Gus. So whenever he was on the field, they threw a swing pass to him. Was it Asa Martin? Maybe. I don't somebody like that where it's like anytime they're on the field, it's just like, hey, he got the football. Like that's not the way to do it.
Well, and the other one was anytime Ontario McCaleb came in motion, he was getting the jet sweep every single time. And so you're right. I want him to be used as a decoy. When he goes into motion, fake it to him and then, hand off the dive or fake the handoff and drop back and hit a guy going down the sideline or something of that nature. But I do like the fact that he said, and I think his quote was something like, we're going to have a place on the play sheet that says Malcolm, and we're just going to go to that when we need him for something. So if they can get him I'm like you. Don't just throw him out there and be like, okay, you're getting the ball now. No, that's not going to work. That's going to work maybe 1 or 2 games. And then after that, once that's on film, everybody's going to be like, okay, anytime this package is in, this guy's getting the ball.
Yeah, right.
They did a great job of it Saturday, Zach, because not offensively, but special teams wise, they removed the tight end from being the up man on the pooch kickoff and put him there. And so he was able to receive the kick. And you saw what he did. I mean, he picked up 30, 40 yards, and they did a great job of disguising it because New Mexico didn't realize, hey, there's a different guy as the up man now. They kicked it right to him, and then they paid for it.
Yeah, I mean, he's electric, and so we'll see how he fits into this offense moving forward. But he needs 3 or 4 targets a game at this point.
Easy, and in space, whether it's some sort of slant or drag across the middle. Again, giving it to him on some sort of jet sweep type deal that they've done before. Yeah. Or I've said this before. Nothing against other players on the field. I wouldn't mind him seeing returning a punt or 2 just because of his electricity that he has.
I'm with you, especially if the muff punt thing does not get fixed. 100% agree with you. Ben, how can people check out everything you've got going on?
News Talk WANI that you can catch me weekday mornings between 6 and 9 locally in the Auburn Opelika area. Stream it at aunetwork.com. Click on the WANI tab.
Yep. And of course, check out Locked On Auburn wherever you get your podcasts. Like the video. Please subscribe. We'll see you next time. This has been Locked On Auburn.